This week's video is all tutorial. There's going to be no messing about, so don't expect any jokes where I suddenly slap Jeff Bezos for no reason. Why not? I assume you guys already know what Home Assistant is, so this, without further ado, is how to start with Home Assistant entirely from scratch. Home Assistant can be installed on PCs, NAS storage drives, and a whole host of different devices, but I've chosen the Raspberry Pi because of its small form factor and its ability to save your electricity bill. In conjunction with the Raspberry Pi 4, I'm also installing Home Assistant on an SSD rather than an SD card. This is because Home Assistant burns through SD cards like Johnny Depp's lawyer burns through Amber Heard's defense.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Objection, Your Honor. Objection, leading. Objection, 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 objection.
I could house my Raspberry Pi in this dreadfully ugly case and just connect this SSD to USB converter to it, but that would be terribly, terribly ugly, and I've got taste. So I'm going to show you how to construct a very pretty case as part of this too, and if you want to control Zigbee devices, you'll need a CONBEE stick or something similar to be able to send and receive Zigbee signals to and from the Raspberry Pi. The only other two things you need for this project are an SSD to USB adapter so that we can install Home Assistant onto the SSD, and an SD card and SD card reader, and you'll see why we need those shortly. The NES Pi case itself comes with two thermal adhesive stickers, and step one is to stick them to the CPU, which is the big silver lump, and the memory, which is the little black lump next to the big silver lump. Step two is to plug the USB cables in, but this case in particular has a shielding issue. And if you plug the USB cables in the way the instructions tell you to, then the Pi will actually interfere with your Zigbee signals. I found this out the hard way. So ignore the instructions and plug the left-hand USB cable into the top left USB 2 port and the right-hand cable into the bottom right USB 3.0 port. Attach the Ethernet cable to the Ethernet port and then place the fan over the Pi, it'll only fit one way around, and then screw it into the Pi with the two big black screws. Turn the big thick cable the right way around according to the little diagram that's attached to it and plug it into the furthest away pins. If you get no power, you've plugged this in the wrong way around. Plug the tiny fan cable into the only place on the board it will fit, and finally, the very top of the case is your SATA socket. So you need to plug the case into the remaining USB 2.0 port. Put the two halves of the case together and give it a damn good screwing. Screw it.
Oh yeah!
Smut! Connect your SSD drive to any USB port on your computer using the SSD adapter and install Raspberry Pi Manager on your PC from https://downloads.raspberrypi.org/imager_latest.exe. Navigates to Operating System, Other Specific Purpose OS, Home Assistant and Home Automation, Home Assistant, and choose the relevant Pi. If you're using my case and my Pi, then it's a Raspberry Pi 4. Choose Storage and select your SSD, and then click Write. Once Home Assistant is written to the SSD drive, you can screw it into the Nintendo cartridge, and then pop the Nintendo cartridge into the case.
Oh yeah! Oh!
Unsubscribe! And now, a word from our sponsor, Skillshare! Skillshare offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. I've been watching ridiculously handsome multimillionaire Marcus Brownlee in his course, YouTube Success, Script Shoot and Edit with MKBHD, to find out how I can make better public information films. Marcus taught me to only ever make videos that I would personally want to watch. With no advertisements and new premium classes on a regular basis, you can really expand your creativity. Unless, of course, you're Reginald here, who is as stupid as he is ugly. Skillshare is a community of fellow creatives who provide encouragement, communication, and inspiration. Mr. Brownlee has taught me to hold an audience's attention by shooting the subject occasionally from a different angle. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, where you can learn how not to be Reginald. Don't stop being Reginald. And now, back to our main feature. Most Raspberry Pis are not set to boot from the USB port into an SSD drive, they're set to boot from the little SD card. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the Raspberry Pi from now on boot from the USB port. In order to do this, put your SD card into your PC and using Raspberry Pi Imager again, navigate to Operating System, Miscellaneous Utility Images, Bootloader, USB boot. Choose storage and select your SD card. Once it's written to the card, simply plug the SD card into the Raspberry Pi and then turn it on. As if it's not turned on enough. This channel is nothing but sex noises and people getting slapped! The Raspberry Pi now will boot from its SSD drive, so turn it off, plug in the CONBEE stick if you're going for that option, and then turn it back on again. Now that you've turned it on, you'll have to wait about 5 minutes probably before visiting the following address. Navigate to http://homeassistant:8123 from your PC. This won't take you to a website on the internet, it takes you to a website on the Raspberry Pi itself to allow you to configure Home Assistant. When you visit that page, you'll probably find Home Assistant is still going through its first ever boot up sequence. You get to play with some star constellations while you wait. Fun.
One eternity later.
Once it's finished installing, it will ask you to create yourself a username and password. It's imperative that you keep this somewhere safe because it's the only way you'll be able to get onto Home Assistant. As part of this wizard, Home Assistant will discover all of the devices you already have on your network. And this is your opportunity to tell Home Assistant whereabouts in your house those things are and to create rooms. And when you're finished, you'll be presented with a dashboard that looks a little bit something like this. If your plan was simply to get disparate home automation systems all under one roof, then you've already done it. That's it, complete. You can now use this dashboard to turn all of your devices on and off. Your CONBEE stick will have been added as part of the setup process you've just followed. So in order to add Zigbee devices to your CONBEE stick, all you've got to do is go to Settings, Devices and Services, Add Integration, and click on Add Zigbee Device. If your Zigbee device is in pairing mode, it should be automatically discovered and added to your dashboard. You can add your phone to Home Assistant simply by downloading the app and then logging into the app with the same Home Assistant details you've just created. You'll want to give the Home Assistant app location permissions so that Home Assistant can figure out when your phone has left the house. You'll also want to name your phone something appropriate so that you can find it in Home Assistant's control panel when you want to create geofencing rules. You'll want to create an account for your wife and repeat these steps using her mobile phone too. That's if you've got a wife. Which, let's face it, you're into Home Assistant now. You don't have a wife anymore. You're a virgin again. I will take a shovel to your head! Isn't that right, wife? Yes! You can create a second account for your wife's phone to log into by simply going to Settings, People, Add Person, and filling in her details. The Overview section of Home Assistant is your dashboard, and you'll probably find it's full of things you don't want. and things that are named in a way you don't recognize. My Tado thermostatic radiator valve, for example, has populated loads of stuff in the dashboard that I'm not interested in. And the correct way to resolve this is to click each entity one at a time, choose the settings icon, choose advanced settings, and then hide it. My Shelly bulbs have also got some weird nerdy dork name, so I'm going to open them up in the same way and rename them appropriately. You can see some of my entities could be literally anything. If you can't tell what something is, then simply click on it, go to settings, and click related, and you should be able to figure out which integration it came from. Correcting your dashboard like this would take forever, and you wouldn't actually be able to reorder the individual rooms, so you have to take full control of the Home Assistant dashboard yourself. In order to do this, click on the 3 dots in the top right corner, click Edit Dashboard, and then select Take Control. You can now delete cards entirely, such as this test room that I don't want to see, and it just deletes it from the dashboard. The devices themselves still exist in Home Assistant and could be added back into the dashboard if you wanted later. You can also manually edit each card by clicking the Edit button at the bottom, and on the right is a preview of what the card will look like if you save your edits, and on the left is the editor itself. The big cross will remove the item from your dashboard, and the Edit button will allow you to rename the item. If you have accidentally deleted an item and you want it back, or you simply wanted to add something that was missing from your dashboard, you can simply do so by searching for the name of the entity. Slightly more complicated things like thermostats, alarm panels, and cameras are under the second and third tabs, and you can remove them from here if you're not interested in seeing them. Some cards might only display Nerdy Dork View for some reason, but it's pretty easy to see which bits of code need to be deleted if you want to get rid of particular entities. Just delete that line of code and those things will vanish. If you want to move the cards to a different place in the panel, you just use the up and down arrows to move them about. And once you're satisfied the dashboard looks the way you want it to look, just click Done and you're finished. If you now open up your mobile phone, you'll find the mobile phone has the new dashboard too. This dashboard is boring. What I really want is a more advanced dashboard that has multiple tabs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the 3 dots again and select Edit Dashboard, and this time I'm going to click the plus button to add a tab. I'm going to call this tab Thermostats, and I'm going to search for a suitably thermostat-y looking icon and then save the tab. Now we can start adding new cards to the tab, and if I search for the thermostat card, I can select it, pick the thermostat I want to display, name it, and then press save. If I repeat the process for all my thermostats, I'll have a card just for thermostats, and then I can remove them from the main dashboard. I can repeat the process to add a cameras tab, and if I want to add cameras to this tab, I follow through the same process again, but this time because the Home Assistant crew have randomly chosen not to add a proper camera card, I'm going to instead choose Search by Entity, and then find the cameras that I want to add. At which point Home Assistant will automatically suggest a card that does what we want.
5 minutes later.
Now that I've repeated this process and I've tidied up the main dashboard, I now have a dashboard of buttons to control my stuff, a dashboard of thermostats to control the heating in my house, and a dashboard of cameras so I can see what's going on. Home Assistant at this point has no cloud connection, and this gives us 2 problems. The first one is, I can't control it with She That Should Not Be Named. The second problem, and it's probably a little bit worse, is I can't actually leave my house with my mobile phone and still control my devices because I have left my personal network. There are ways in which you can resolve this for free, but it involves a metric butt ton of effort.
It is perfectly simple. All you have to do is create an Amazon AWS account, an Amazon developer account, create your very own Amazon skill, create a Home Assistant access token in Home Assistant, create a NetPort firewall rule to convert port 443 to port 8173, and then enable your Alexa skill.
It's doable, and my mate Lewis will walk you through it if you want. I'll link you in the description to Lewis's tutorial. I personally don't like subscriptions, but this is one that I am paying for. 1, to support the Home Assistant community and keep their servers running, and 2, I'm very, very lazy. Bitches. To do this not for free, go to Settings, Home Assistant Cloud, and click Start Your Free Month Trial. Create an account with your email address and log in. You'll be presented with Home Assistant's cloud service webpage. Now go back to Home Assistant and log in with those same details to tie your instance of Home Assistant to your Nabu Casa account. You'll see the cloud connection status connect, but you won't be able to access Home Assistant using your remote URL straight away. Give it a few minutes.
A few minutes later.
Now that we have our external URL, we need to be able to tell our mobile phone what that URL is, so that when we leave the house, the mobile phone will use your external URL to get into Home Assistant. To do this, go to Settings, Home Assistant Cloud, open up the external URL and copy it to your clipboard. Now go back to Settings, scroll down to the companion app and replace the default URL with the external Nabu Casa URL instead. Bob's your uncle. For Alexa support, simply scroll down to the Alexa section and click Manage Entities. And in here, simply tell it which of your entities you do or do not want Alexa to find when you get her to scan for devices. Once you've got them selected, you simply need to enable the Home Assistant skill in your Alexa app, and then log in with your Nabu Casa details and tell her to discover devices. You can make a scene. No, not that kind of scene. Not the kind of scene that I made when I got dumped for some bloke called Richard. True story. I'm talking, of course, about scenes in Home Assistant, where you can get more than one light bulb to do a thing, whether that be turning on, turning off, or changing color. To create a scene, simply go to Settings, Automations and Scenes, click the Scenes tab, and then click Add Scene. I recommend naming your scenes with the same format. I use room-description so that my scenes are all properly laid out. Choose the icon and then the area, and then start adding your devices. Once you've added the devices, you just need to set their states as required, and in my case, they're on and pink. Then you save the scene. My new scene is an entity, and that means that I can add it to my dashboard by editing the gym card and just searching for that entity. I can also add the scene to Alexa like we did in the last section of this video, simply by clicking on it and telling it to advertise to Alexa. I'm going to show you how to use the built-in automations for Home Assistant. This will of course make very many people go,
No! Use no red! Use no red! Bro! Why did you use no red?
No red sucks. I hate no red. I hate no red, it's fine. But I don't think the actual built-in automations are as hard to use as people make out, and I think it's a much better starting point. Go to Settings, Automations and Scenes, and click Create Automation. Select Start with an empty automation, and it really is just a case of naming the automation, which again, I recommend a proper naming scheme, and then choosing a trigger. In my case, the device gym motion sensor starts detecting motion is my trigger. I'm then going to add a condition, which is that the rule should only run if the sun has gone down. And then an action, which is to set the scene, gym, all lights pink. You could create a second scene which will turn all of the gym lights off. And I've done that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to extend this automation to wait for 5 minutes, and then switch all the lights off again by using the second scene, gym, all lights off. Once you've stopped talking to girls altogether and your virginity has grown back, you could then create a scene that says that when this button is held down, it will automatically send an ADB command across my network to turn on my NVIDIA Shield, and then start a Spotify playlist playing to make it seem sexy in a room. And then turn the lights on too. Why not? There's no girl there. There's no girl, obviously. And finally, backups. Do this immediately. Do it. If you don't, you will regret it. You need Home Assistant backups so that if it ever goes kaput, you can just reinstall Home Assistant and then set the backup as part of the installation. It's really easy to do. To back up your Home Assistant installation, all you've got to do is go to Settings, System, Backups, and then Create Backup. Select Full Backup and hit Create. And once your backup is created, you can click on it, click the 3 white dots, and download your backup to your PC. I then recommend putting that on a Google Drive location so that if your PC ever dies, you still have your backup installation there too. There is still so much to learn, and an awful lot of your devices are probably still reliant on the cloud at this point. There are links in the description to my mate Rob from The Hookup and my mate Lewis. Both of those guys will teach you an awful lot of very cool stuff, and I have to thank them from the bottom of my heart for my knowledge because that's where I got it from. If you want to go have a look in the description, there is also a list of everything I used in today's tutorial, so Raspberry Pis, SSDs, the works. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up. That'll tell YouTube's algorithms it was a good video, and more people should see it. If you want to see some more of this guy, hit that subscribe button and ding that bell. If you ding the bell, it lets YouTube's algorithms know that you want to be notified when I upload videos. These incredible people here are my patrons from Patreon, and without them, there would literally be no video this week because they helped me pay for all of this stuff. Without them, there would be no channel. If you wanted to be one of those incredible people, you can do that at either Patreon or buy me a one-off beer at PayPal, and either way, I will genuinely love you forever. These are my Facebooks and my Twitters and my Instagrams and my TikToks too. Come and hang out there and we can be best friends. See you next time. Questions about your location and currency and whatever else.
I was very, very drunk. And cut away gags of people getting slapped!
Why is that all up my face? Because I'm no longer connected to my private network.